welcome. Hi. It's a happy sunny day here, blue sky, very pretty. In keeping with our astrology theme, take it or leave it, you don't have to resonate with astrology. It's just one archetypal blueprint that happens to resonate here. Hey, Jayashree. But it's the sun's moving into Sagittarius today. So in my world, which doesn't have to be for you, that's always a real big breath of fresh air when the sun moves into Sag, out of that gorgeous depth digging Scorpio and into the eternal optimism of, as Lisa Hill once put it, because I live with a triple Sagittarian, they can be optimistic to the point of fantasy. Indeed, maybe there's a Sag on this phone call. It's a beautiful energy to be around. Anyway, it felt really fun today to have the sun moving into Sag and just all bright and sunny. So I'm real happy that we're all together and coming in the spirit of wondering, contemplating, inquiring, open field listening, unknowingness. So let's just sit for, it feels like maybe there's a lot to be said today. But I want to start with just our silent arrival, our getting ourselves where we actually are. So let's do that at the beginning. So this is kind of how we find ourselves to be where we actually are. Tuning into the right here and right nowness of the present moment. It's our seat is in our seat and the breath is happening, the heart is beating. The mind could be lots and lots of different places. Just allowing a relaxation of the attention from the thought stream into just the actual felt sense of being right here. And the attention can be caught up in the description of what that means or how we'd like it to be different or what we remember it, how it's related to memories and all of the stuff, the associations and the categorizing and naming and all of the stuff. But we just invite and sort of encourage the attention to relax out of that narrative, descriptive thought stream and become very present to the sense of being right here, the felt, direct experience of it. have a bit of a, I suppose, a bit of an agenda today, some things that are wanting to come forward. It'll be interesting to see how it spirals into it. Have to see where it goes a little bit. I think that one of the an experience that every single person can relate to, that is really sort of woven into our cell tissue and our DNA, and also it's woven into this spiritual path of unfolding, awakening, is fear. It's certainly woven into the collective fabric in a very vivid way right now, but it's part of the survival instinct and programming in the mind-body. We have a nervous system, and the nervous system has evolved out of survival and protection. It has become sort of the core of the me as well. This fear-based survival instinct. It's completely understandable, both from a just direct experiential, and also, from an anatomical, purely physiological sort of standpoint as well. It's what we talked about last time with the, oh, that's good for me, oh, I don't want that, oh, this piece of reality works, that piece of reality doesn't. And all the, levels of that. At a certain level, it's very important. It's very important because we have to know, okay, that's hot. That will burn, all of the crossing the street. It's good to go when there's no cars coming, all of that stuff. And the sense of how to, maintain the body's health just from a gross and anatomical sort of perspective. Where we kind of get into trouble is when that mechanism, you might call it, that survival mechanism, that fear of what's coming, that uncertainty that is taken as fundamental truth. And that's based in the belief that the mind-body and the separate me is our fundamental, essential, true nature. If that's believed, then extinction is certain. It will die, what we call die, which transform. And life itself is quite uncertain. It's inherently, innately, absolutely uncertain. So this fear is woven in. It's very deep. And as the thoughts beliefs, assumptions, the limited divisional, oppositional scenarios begin to unwind, be seen through, dissolve, become unbelievable, what, you know, the mind and the body are one thing. So as that starts unfolding, beliefs start dissolving, really. The conditioning starts unraveling. The body can really grab on because it does feel fearful at certain parts of the journey. There can be quite a bit of fear that we're not really actually even aware of on a conscious level, you know, until we get still. Start questioning, start wondering, and then it can come just front and center into experience. I know it's not sometimes very fun to be read to, but I did want to read a little bit about this out of this book. And I'm going to talk more about Bonnie Greenwell later. I can let any of you know about her. I'll talk about her in a minute. She's a teacher in the Adyashanti lineage, and she's an expert. Her field of giftedness, her brilliancy, is Kundalini. But she has this to say about this, and she's speaking from her personal experience. I woke up one morning with my entire body in a state of fear. This is after she's been on the spiritual path for quite a while and been sitting with Adya for quite a few years. And yet there seemed to be no triggering factor, no thought, no event, nothing happening in the room, not even a dream to tell me why I was afraid. As I felt my way into the energy of this experience, I found that it was an energy housed in my cells, as if my nervous system was stuck in a strange vibration that could hardly bear the thought of uncertainty of life. As if at any moment the body would be gone. And I could see that aside from the thoughts that generate fear, there is fear in the very DNA, because the body knows itself to be only a temporary manifestation, set up from the beginning for extinction. I used to think that fear is learned, and indeed the traumas in life profoundly activate the energies of fear and can frequently mark us forever after, making us reactive, protective, self-defeating, and even violent. Nations create war out of fear. We can be afraid physically, sometimes for good reason, but the most defeating of fears comes from the mind. When we have thoughts about ourselves, our life, or other people that cause us to contract and withhold our vital energies and free expression. It's as if the innate fear in the physical body seeps into the memory banks and distorts our mental perceptions. Yes, as we all know, right? And that can get really heated up when you start, which we're all starting all the time. We're always at the beginning. Down the spiritual path. In my own personal experience, during what I call the dark night of the ego, the dark night of the soul came later and as a different experience, which I can talk about some other time. But in the dark night of the ego, when the me, the center of what I had considered my life, experience, that center feeling, that constant narrator fell out. It was during a time of giant, monumental grief and sort of agony in my life. And in the body, it created sheer terror, panic. And I guess that's what people mean by panic attacks. And I was working with a counselor at the time, and he was a Buddhist, and I was not at all really, to be quite honest, thinking about it as a spiritual crisis, a spiritual thing, a spiritual path, a spiritual anything. I just really needed the terror and the panic to sort of quit so I could like be a nurse and a mom and all the stuff that I was doing. And he gave me a mantra to what he called rewire the nervous system in the cells. And I've shared that with some of you before, and I thought I would share it here again. And he told me to say it 10,000 times a day. But I think what he meant was as much as you can. A lot. And it was just the simple Buddhist practice of naming what's present, fear, and acknowledging no danger. Fear, no danger. Fear, no danger. And I mean, sometimes this was like a pull over to the side of the road and recite for 15 minutes or more type of activity. But it got in there. It got in there. It started facilitating space around the sensations, space around the assumptions and the narration of what was happening. Started creating deeper and deeper levels of consciousness around the context, to the point where it just became nothing but that. No story. Just, oh yeah, there it is again. Fear. Clear down into the DNA. So I thought I would share that. You may find your own way. Bonnie goes on to say she's worked with thousands and thousands of people in this process. Well, just the more we can be, it's going to sound very paradoxical to say that the more we can be at ease during a panic attack, the less of a struggle it will be. Because when it's experienced in its purity, it's a different experience than when it's experienced through the lens of a descriptive, assumptive story. Fear in its purity, fear moves freely and more quickly as we become accustomed to this. Fear described as, what's wrong? Well, I know what's wrong. I know what's wrong, and this is the, and I know, 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 on top of the fear. I know this, and this piece of information coming in, and I know that, and oh my God, yes, I know this is going to be like a heart attack, and yes, and no, yeah, is experienced incredibly differently than fear. No danger. I mean, I don't think I need to say this, but I'm going to say it. Unless there really is like some kind of danger, I mean, is the house burning down? Then I don't think you would be sitting there going, okay, Jen told me just not to fear it. I mean, right? No, that's not what I'm talking about. Existential fear. Existential fear. The fear of extinction. The fear of death. And the death of the ego is a death. It feels like that. That's how it's experienced. So the body, we can employ skillful means and invite the body to relax into reality. That yes, indeed, all expressions, all forms, all phenomena come into being, return to the source, being, source. It's a constant in and out breath of whatever word you want to put on it. Many of us don't like the word, it's not hard for me because I didn't have a religious background, but God, source, and yet life is ever, isness. Moving from, I don't know if this will work for all of you guys. I've always really, really loved it, kind of in just like, sort of, like when you just go crazy for something, kaleidoscopes. I just think, I don't know, it's such an accurate, I guess, the closest to what is actually seen here, where the eye of the eye, the indivisible, indescribable awareness that is, sees, for lack of a better word, lives as the wind, the fire, the Holy Spirit, she who moves, whatever you want to call it, turns the one. Universe means one turning. One turning. Yes, all the red pieces are still all the red pieces. All the blue pieces are still all the blue pieces. All the yellow pieces are still all the yellow pieces. They never, ever go away, but they transform, transform, transform. Constant, constant, constant. And the me, self-consciousness, is like the red pieces saying, I think I'll just stay right here in this particular pattern as long as it suits me. Oh boy. We get scared. There's a understandable usefulness to the built-in part of our nervous system that provides relative safety. But the soul sort of begins to erode that illusion, I guess you might say. It just erodes the spiritual impulse, the spiritual instinct has no concern for safety whatsoever. I'm not talking about physical, I'm just talking about the safety of knowingness. The safety of knowing, the arrogance of the mind. The spiritual instinct just, it's not relevant. So often, what happens within experience is either fear of death or fear of insanity. Here, it was the fear of insanity. I was convinced. I mean, you know, I have a nurse brain. I was like, psychosis or brain tumor, one or the other, but something really problematic is happening. And it's not good. I'm going to be crazy, not fit for public consumption. The soul, the spirit, whatever is actually, truly directing this life has no, it's just not relevant. It's not anything that could be experienced. Love at all costs. Is the relevance there. So it's just something to be aware of, you know, and find our way with. Because so often, and maybe it isn't with you, it sure was here, there was a massive amount of resistance inherent to the fear. Like, I can't feel that. It felt terrorizing to the system. And I'm not saying this has to be you. It sounds a little dramatic. It just was kind of dramatic here, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be. Fear can, you know, we resist it, right? We resist, like, oh, for the same reason that we have learned not to put our hand in the burning fire. We think that the fear is accurate information and that it will keep us safe. But in this case, it's not. It's not it isn't the compass, the guide. So we compassionately fear. No danger. We can work with it that way. You can adopt a David Hawkins sort of way, which is turn the dial to 10, bring it on, and everything within reality eventually runs its course. It's kind of a deep dive, but that's Dr. Hawkins. Bring it. I'm right here in my one seat. getting questions, questioning, rather than believing is a key. It's key. Questioning. Staying present, questioning. And then, when there's enough space, contemplating if you can, if it's the right time. Who actually is experiencing this fear? What is actually experiencing the fear? Contemplating the actual source rather than the fear itself. Which is a lot easier to say than to do, because fear can be very absorptive. So, also, there's another one is just coming to me. I had sort of a list here, but call somebody you consider to be a teacher, or email them, or, if that's me, great. If it's not, if it's a book or somebody else, reach out. Reach within. Ask for help. I need this now, we say to our soul. Assistance. I sincerely, humbly request. This is something that I used to say over and over. It's coming forward right now. It doesn't have to be yours. Sincerely and humbly request assistance right now. Looking in, or calling, reaching out. What lies beyond the devotion, I guess we might say, to fear of survival is unlimited creativity and potential. Some people, I guess, and I would have, I'm not dissing on it, I would have to speak with them, consider love and fear to be opposites. I'm not sure what's opposite to fear, but if I had to drum something up out of my own experience, I would say creativity. Responsibility, the ability to respond from a unlimited, creative power beyond the mind, rather than a limited belief structure. Carl Jung said the whole world wants peace and the whole world prepares for war. The whole world meaning the mind, our 7 billion mind worlds. War meaning oppositional belief systems. Devotion to division, to separation. Wholeness, the realization of it, it does bring on, as it starts seeping in, infusing and permeating and unfolding within one's own personal experience, it can bring up fear. I mean, just our words, our languaging, you know, I can't hold that in my heart. I can't open my heart to that. You know, that hurts my heart. The overwhelmingness that can be, oh man, profound, right? When the world is shouldered by a personal heart. The personal me trying to bear reality. It's overwhelming. That's, I guess, the why, if there is a why about anything. The realization, the third tenet of Adya's tenets, contemplate the source of reality. The realization of uncaused love, the eternal heart. You know, I was having an interesting conversation with Mary Swanson, who was raised Catholic, and as I know, some of you on this phone call were raised with different religious backgrounds, and talking about the iconography and symbolism of the flaming heart. And it was great. It was such a great reminder for me because I wasn't brought up in any kind of religious tradition, and I found this symbolism after this already happened. So within my experience, I'm just going to say, you know, the opening of this area and the deep eternal flame and fire of the heart of matter was a living reality. And then I saw somebody, I was in Crestone at a 10-day retreat with Sharon Landreth, and there was a picture. It was a Carmelite facility, and there was a picture of Mary with grabbing her chest and the Sacred Heart like beaming out, and I went, oh, okay. It's an archetypal thing. It's a symbol that is transcends any kind of religious dogma. It's an experience of undefended wholeness and the realization that indeed this heart that belongs to somebody, me, can never bear the whole of reality. But the heart of the heart of matter, the giver, the great mother, and I don't mean gender, I mean she, but that's just how it comes, just like this symbol. It's beyond the thinking mind's connotations of those words or those symbols. So yeah, most of you have heard me talk about this responsibility, ability to respond, which is sort of the hallmark of the unlimited potential. And I wanted to give a few examples of this, one of which is very sort of like big, and then one of them is exactly the same, but of a more ordinary nature, I guess you might say. I read something, and I cannot figure out where. I don't know. I tried for you guys, but that Nelson Mandela, after he had become president of South Africa, he and some of his advisors were eating in a cafe, and Mandela asked one of his advisors, that man over there, go ask him to come and have lunch with us. And the advisor said, okay, so they invited the man to the table. And he came to the table, but he was completely silent all through lunch, and he was trembling and really almost like giving off a sense of like panic the whole lunchtime. And after he had got up and left without ever even saying a word, the crew that was with Nelson Mandela, one of them, said, what was the deal there? What's going on? And Nelson Mandela said, that man was my torturer when I was in prison. And he tortured me multiple times. And when I would ask for water, he would like pee on my head. And just, inconceivable to us, right? And they were just like, oh my gosh, how does that work for you to invite him to our table, invite him to lunch? And he said, well, how does it work if I don't? Look at the world. An eye for an eye is endless. It's endless. Revenge, hate, division, otherness is endless. And I don't have the ability to choose that anymore. That's the kind of creative response and ability to respond that can move through and as somebody, not from the mind, right? Holy hell. How would we ever accomplish that? Make that decision, make that choice. It's a very dramatic, kind of graphic example, but the same goes for our areas within our own makeup that are deluded, our own conditioning that tortures. That same welcoming ability. There's a Tibetan lineage holder named, I can't pronounce any of the Tibetan names. Sharon Landreth is so good at it. They just don't roll off my tongue, but I mean, T-S, K-N, it's like, I think it's Sokni. That's as close as I can get, Rinpoche. He's the holder of the three lineages. And a dear, dear human being. I saw him in Crestone. He has a stupa in Crestone called the Stupa of Enlightenment. And there's a shrine there to the mother, the Great Mother. And he's kind of known as a very, very down-to-earth human being, even though he's like this, he was recognized at 8 years old by the Karmapa and all that stuff that happens in Tibet that's so like remarkable. And he talks about this welcoming of the fear, welcoming of the torturer, welcoming of the deluded parts of ourselves and reality at large. He was at a conference, and there were two pavilions connected by a sky bridge. And he had to get over to one to give his talk. And he stepped out onto the sky bridge, and a huge fear, paralyzing fear came over his nervous system. And he was kind of like hanging onto the rail and like sweating, and and in his great wisdom, he turned toward it and said, why, what do you need? What do you need? Why? To the fear. And this whole memory of climbing trees as a youngster and falling from a great height, a conditioned pattern of response came into his awareness that was causing giant fear in his physiology. And he just stayed with it in a welcoming, questioning, still sort of way. And it's almost miraculous, you guys, how when something is treated with compassionate understanding, it can let go. Let go. Move forward. Transform. So it's part of the process, I guess you might say, or it's not really quite the right word, is it? It's the path of spiritual awakening. It's part of it is to come into deep experiential experience with fear. Some of us just will, who knows? Maybe there's one person out there who just never had any. I don't know. Just bound to be, right? It's reality. Everything is represented. But if you read any of which I'm sure all of you do, or have, or listen to, or however, the masters and the lineages that have sustained and evolved over time, this is a topic that is always addressed. Unfortunately, sometimes, I don't know if it's just the mind or just where we tend to get stuck, it sometimes never moves into the what's on the other side. It's just and just explaining that for centuries, It's okay, but yes, this too shall pass, and this too must be surrendered. The suffering. It's sort of, you know, it's not really opening. It's of its own accord. It's uncovering, discovering that inherent, innate, wholeness. Byron Katie says goodness. You know, the instinct to move from and as that which brings harmony. As we've talked about, it's not what we can't go out there and, well, for a while it feels like we're seeking it, right? Spiritual seekers. But at some point we realize that, oh, this is within me, as me. Not the small self, but like a ray of light is never separate or far or distant or unlike the sun. Light is light. The photons being emitted, right, from the sun itself are in no way separate. It's the nature of light to shine. So as the me, really, the belief in separation is surrendered, let go of, disbelieved, dissolved. More and more wisdom, I guess you might say, the wisdom of the one source is more available, but not in a way that the me goes, oh, I see that and that's mine and now I'll utilize it. In the way of an empty vessel, a hollowed out reed. With no thought of goodness, badness. It's just moved. It's like in a strong north wind, the wind's coming out of the north and all the plants bend south. Not because they think they should or that's the good thing to do, but because it's a strong north wind and that's the way it moves. It's difficult for the mind to understand that which is beyond the doer of deeds and the thinker of thoughts. The whole of the universe, the whole of the kaleidoscope moves us as the whole of the ocean moves a wave. Alan Watts. We are moved. It's like when the one miracle, I really honestly have never read the Bible, but lots of it comes through my consciousness. Jesus is walking through a huge crowd of people, the world at large, a chaotic mass of human phenomena, and he feels the power move through him. He didn't summon the power, ask for the power, look at somebody, decide the person was in need of the power. The power moved. And the woman who touched, and then he said, "Who touched the hem of my robe?" Who was that? Her faith has healed her. That's like beyond good and bad. You know, the whole Nelson Mandela thing. If he was to take up the view of himself as a good person for inviting that guy to his table, then necessarily that man is a bad person. It's beyond that. It's beyond that. And you know, people have tried to express this in lots of ways, and I'm going to talk more about it next time. Adya calls it a numinous individual. St. John of the Cross, you know, a deified soul. But when our egos hear these words, it can move into some dangerous territory, right? When the ray of light starts believing it's the sun. Because it is fundamentally, essentially, absolutely no difference. And yet, and it comes from the sun, it will return to the sun. It obviously fundamentally is the sun. But if it builds some sort of identity out of that, then we've got people sitting in rooms all over the planet thinking they are going to change reality with their thoughts. Manifest Cadillacs and all of that. I'm going to give us a break here in just a few minutes. On those same lines, another book I'm going to read out of called The Path to Know Self, Life at the Center by Bernadette Roberts, which was an absolute Bible for me for a while at a certain phase, because it was quite literally the only thing that resonated with what was happening in my experience. She talks about St. John of the Cross a lot. So when St. John of the Cross goes out on a limb to say, because the soul is deified or one with God, all its works are now divine. What the deified soul is, then, is a soul that is authentic, whole, natural, spontaneous, fearless, and strongly itself in every event and situation. What is divine is the deep interior source of acts, not the acts themselves. On the surface, there is nothing divine about nursing the sick, peeling carrots, or even praying. Nor does a good intention make an act divine. The soul, at the deepest level of its being, is identified with, from, as, through, source, and it now acts and lives from this depth. It's a strong feeling, but it does not ensure that our acts are always correct or that the mind is no longer subject to faulty judgment. When the action is under the influence of uncaused love, then the actions themselves have the air of the divine, or like Adya says, the perfume. But there is nobody there to claim any divinity or ownership for them. So, a divine act only occurs when the soul does nothing. And Source acts through it, without her knowing or cooperation. A soul that is authentic, whole, natural, spontaneous, fearless, and strongly itself in every event and situation. Response able to respond. Beyond the ideas of the opposites, the dual perspective. Okay. What is always here? In the presence of fear, in the presence of joy, in the presence of being 9 years old, in the presence of being 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, in the presence of right here, right now, listening to Jen's voice. What gives way to each and every moment, changing and unchanging, formless, timeless. No way to hold it or grab onto it, use it, and yet always, always right here, right now. Not coming, not going, in the presence of thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, insights, revelations, high states of being, low states of being. Times we prefer, times we don't prefer. In the presence and in the midst and among and as all changing phenomena. What is never coming, never going, never moving. Indescribable, indivisible, uncreatable, not manufacturable. Like the wind, we can't hold it. We can't touch it. We can't grab onto it, store it away, use it. And yet, always, always, right here, right now, amidst and among and as. Existence, everything. The intellect can't define it or say something about it. It can't make it an it, an object. It's directly experienced, without name. Stillness, silentness. Awareness. recognition of this as all phenomena are allowed to operate freely within and as this awareness. Attention is relaxed out of the willful need to change what's happening. The heart, the true heart, the deep heart, suffuses and permeates the experience. Becomes conscious. It becomes a conscious experience. The radiation of the uncaused lovingness, the heart of being. Becomes consciously experienced when phenomena are surrendered. And attention is returned to awareness. you guys. Have a beautiful evening. Love, love, love. Hi, Meadow. So,
Thanks, Jen.
thank you. Night.
Thanks. Night.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Yep.
It's always really good.
I'm happy.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Talk to you soon.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you.
I don't know what that was. Night.